Looks like we're live. Just give this a second to kind of stabilize for everybody here. Make sure that we're across all platforms. Mile high, hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. My name is Lance Sanderson. I am your host tonight, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, Erick Trickel. Also joining us tonight is the co-host of the Building the Broncos podcast. He is also a draft analyst for Mile High Huddle. He is your good friend and our good friend, Nick Kendell. Fellas, what's going on? How are we doing out there?
Doing pretty good, man. Just excited to be on here, as I always am, and talking football and talking about how free agency has affected the draft, which is always a fun conversation.
Yep, doing pretty well here. Still working from home, ready for the weekend. I was trying to have a lighter alcohol consumption in March, and the world kind of changed that for me. So gonna have some beers after this, and I wish, man, I'm really just bummed about how long my hair is. It's already starting to like kind of wave over here on this side. So. You know, we'll see what happens in a couple weeks from now, but it might just get just crazy. I might just let everything go.
Well, I mean, why not pull the Tom Hanks and Castaway and just let everything get out of it? You know, a quick tip for you: just wear a hat. It might help just a little bit. Now, guys, today our conversation is specifically driven around the top 15 of the NFL draft and how free agency over the course of the first wave of free agency has affected what we are hearing coming from Erick here as far as how the top 15 could fall. Now, before we get into that really quick, guys, I just want to get a couple of quick things brought up to you guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at DVDD_pod. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Sanderson MHH. You can follow Erick at Erick Trickel, and for Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, let's see here. Pull it up. Make sure you guys are following at Huddle Up Pod to make sure you have your guys' fingers on the pulse of what's going on with the show. It's a great way to get live updates and everything on what we are doing here with the show. Also, head on over to @milehighhuddle.com for live updates on your Denver Broncos. Now, guys, again, before we get into this conversation, I have one quick question for the both of you. And Nick, I kind of want your take first here. There's, with recent news regarding Darqueze Dennard, the cornerback formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now his contract was rejected from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it comes out and there's now three cornerbacks on the market in Bashaud Breeland, Prince Amukamara, and Darqueze Dennard. Of the three, with the Broncos needing another cornerback to come in and fit in with A.J. Bouye and Bryce Callahan, if you had your opportunity to pick one of those three, who would it be and why?
Man, that is a tough question. Honestly, I think I'm going to lead Dennard because he is the youngest. I think he has the most potential upside. And if you're paying all those guys, you know, you're going to get that Vic Fangio, Ed Donatel bump. And I think Dennard, especially from that nickel spot, he is really good there. So I guess the biggest question is, where are you playing Callahan? You know, a lot of talk. He did his best work with the Chicago Bears from slot, but then last year it sounded like Denver wanted to play him on boundary more. So if you want to play him on boundary, I think Dennard is the guy. If you're looking for more of a one-year impact, I'm probably going to Amukamara, but any of those guys make sense. I tend to lean younger. What we've seen from Donatel and Fangio in the past is they'll take former first-round picks that have not worked out elsewhere and then take them and boom, all of a sudden they're good because they're playing them where they're at their best. So I think you have the most upside with Dennard, but it might come at the highest price.
For me, I'd be looking at Bashaud Breeland. I think he actually was a lot better last year than a lot of fans are giving him credit for, and just played actually very good football last year. There were some moments where he got a little bit grabby downfield, which has been one big issue with him throughout his whole career. But I think that with everything going on and all this stuff, that you have to look at somebody who can come in and pick up the offense, because there might not be offseason programs to help pick up the offense or pick up the defense and pick up what their job's going to be and all that stuff like that. So that's why I'm leaning Prince over everything. If that wasn't a concern, if that wasn't an issue, then it would definitely be Bashaud Breeland. But with that, I mean, we have to live with the times that are going on. So it's going to be Prince Amukamara for me because he knows basically what his role is going to be, and he basically knows the defense already.
And also with Bashaud Breeland, he's a street free agent. So the other two are going to come into compensatory pick. Prince, that's what I meant. Yeah, he's the only street free agent, where the other two are not.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that, like, if you're looking for the younger, more upside, a guy who can play slot, it's Dennard. But I think for me, between Breeland and Amukamara, the fact that Breeland is going to play into the compensatory pick formula and Prince will not, I think that's enough of a differentiator where I'll lean that way.
And I agree with you guys. I just with the familiarity between Prince Amukamara and Vic Fangio, I think that's probably the way that I would lean. Not necessarily a great long term kind of an option. Going to be 1 year, $5-6 million. Especially after what we saw with Xavier Rhodes in free agency. He just signed with the Indianapolis Colts on a 1 year, $5 million deal. So the cornerback market is kind of dried up at this particular point. So anybody that we do see brought in is now going to be on kind of a shorter term, lower money kind of a deal. Now, to progress this conversation forward just a little bit, with free agency and everything that has happened so far, there's a lot of ways that the top 10, top 15 picks can really shake up. Now, Eric, there's something that we've kind of heard, and this is something that I've brought up before in just a private conversation with you and I about the Bengals and the number 1 overall pick and how they might not necessarily be sold on Joe Burrow. Now, everybody else seems to be sold on Joe Burrow, but after he decided to forego the Senior Bowl and Justin Herbert was down there working with Zach Taylor and the rest of the Bengals coaching staff, is there any kind of a possibility that we do see a trade with the Miami Dolphins moving up to number 1, giving up at least 2 of their 3 first-round picks, maybe a second and a future second, to go get Joe Burrow and let the Bengals slide back down and then take Justin Herbert there?
There's definitely been conversations there, and there's a lot of smoke going around about it. When there's smoke, there's a little bit of fire. So I'm not sure if the deal will actually come through, but there is definitely some rumors going around that the Bengals do prefer Justin Herbert over Joe Burrow. And part of that is from that they got to sit there and spend that time with him at the Senior Bowl. They got to get to know him. They got to learn all these other aspects about him that they didn't with Joe Burrow. If they stay put, I would fully expect it to be Joe Burrow. I mean, he is the best quarterback prospect in this class. But even if they stay put, they could surprise everybody, take Justin Herbert there. And then that's going to cause a lot of panic at teams wanting to move up to number 2, number 3, and everything like that if Joe Burrow falls. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. I mean, I don't see this falling down as the 2018 class did, where everybody thought Sam Darnold was the number 1 pick, and then boom, there goes Baker Mayfield. I don't expect that, but never know. And as for that, there's definitely talk going around about Miami moving down. Talk has been basically all 3 of those first-round picks this year, plus a few other things going to Cincinnati for that. Cincinnati has a very poorly talented roster.
Depleted.
So if they're able to go and pick up those extra picks, get Herbert, the quarterback that they actually prefer, and then still have those other picks, then that would actually be a huge win for them if Justin Herbert panned out.
And I think Herbert is, I mean, you touched on it, Zach Taylor and that staff got to work with him at the Senior Bowl, which does matter. But also I think with Herbert, there is some talk that, his tools, his upside, his athleticism, the arm talent might be a better fit for that offense, for what they're looking for. I mean, you have a much more of a shotgun spread attack with the Joe Burrow, and he's not throwing bullet 15-yard outs or anything. Herbert has more arm talent. There's not a throw that Herbert can't make. Now, obviously, there's more than arm talent and athleticism that it takes to play quarterback. But this has been something that's been talked about since when the Bengals clinched that first overall pick. Joe Burrow was the guy, but a lot of people, these NFL insiders were saying, maybe Justin Herbert's a better fit for what they want to do. So there's smoke there. I still think if you put a gun to my head, I think the Bengals are going to stay there at 1 and they'll end up taking Burrow. That's just, this is the talking season of the NFL draft. It's what makes it fun. But I think it's more of a possibility than people think. And I have some Bengal friends who are distraught about that possibility, already talked themselves into Joe Burrow, loving him, all that stuff. But, we'll see what happens.
And I'm just going to go ahead. I was going to hold out on asking some of these questions here, but Robert Caslow comes in on YouTube and he says, would you think the Bengals would get Herbert over Burrows? Now, that was something I was going to say. If you actually love a guy, if that's the route, like, why would you wait? Why would you put the risk that somebody else could go and get him? Why not just take Herbert at 1?
Yeah, that's definitely another whole issue with this is if you love a guy, just take him. Moving down a few spots, getting those extra picks isn't always worth the possibility of losing him. There's word going around that the Chargers love him, and if they move up ahead of them, they might take him. I believe that if the Chargers move up for a quarterback, it's going to be for Tua, but again, we don't know what's going on with them. We don't know what's a smoke screen. We don't know what's reality here. So it's always definitely a risk for that, and I think that when it comes to the Bengals, if they decide to move down and take Herbert, I think they're okay if they land at one of the other quarterbacks that may fall, or be okay with just building up the roster and going after a quarterback next year. So I think that has to be play into it a little bit as well as maybe we build up the roster, and then next year have a good roster. Probably not get that many wins because, wins do matter with the quarterback quite a bit, is such an important piece for that. And not win that many games, still be in a position and probably in the top 10 and sitting in sight of Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or Brock Purdy, who's getting a lot of hype.
Nick over here with the foul face, man. Now, to go back to one of the points that you had made was specifically about the Chargers and about how they might be willing to move up. Now, there's been a lot of buzz going around in the NFL circles over the last few weeks. I mean, probably since even the draft order was finalized, that the Detroit Lions might be looking to move down. Now, this is kind of a hot topic here with the Detroit Lions needing some help on their defense. They've already got a quarterback in Matt Stafford in play, need some weapons to add to that offense as well. But with Matt Patricia, obviously on the defensive side of the football there, I could see them kind of moving down and going to target like a Derek Brown or an Isaiah Simmons kind of a guy. And if they could, switch spots with the Los Angeles Chargers, who are coming up to go and get like a Tua or a Justin Herbert, or maybe even say a Jordan Love, maybe they fall in love with him. I mean, is that a possibility as well?
It definitely is, but I think that one thing that could really throw a whole wrench into all this is the Chargers moving up for Tristan Wirfs, jumping ahead of the Giants, who supposedly love Tristan Wirfs. But if they're moving up for a quarterback and the Lions are moving down, then I would think that I really don't think that they want to drop down that far. I don't think they want to run the risk of losing the Ohio State quarterback or potentially moving out. Yeah. Or Isaiah Simmons. They don't want to risk losing that, even though Isaiah Simmons I don't see as a great fit for them, especially after they went and got Jamie Collins. How they do a little bit of things. I think that Matt Patricia and his defense, he'd probably likely use them not exactly the same, but very similar to just cause some problems. But it's definitely a possibility that they can move down and get that. I think Jeffrey Okudah is the guy that they really want to go get. I think he's the guy that is their player on their board that they really want. So moving down to that, I mean, I don't think that he would go in that top 5 if they switch places with the Chargers. But again, it's that whole thing of you never know. If this whole thing with the Giants wanting either Isaiah Simmons or Tristan Wirfs, then if that's all smoke and he's on the board, why wouldn't the Giants go take him and then you're not sitting there? So it's definitely a risk, even moving down to 5 or 6.
It depends on how much they like CJ Henderson. I mean, for the Broncos, I don't like CJ Henderson, but there seems to be some people who are better at evaluating cornerbacks than me. I fully admit that say CJ Henderson has an argument to be right up there with Okudah because the length and the cover skills he has. I don't agree with it, but I've seen it from like a Crockwell, who used to play cornerback for the 49ers, I believe. And he's been banging that drum that CJ Henderson is cornerback 1 in this class because of the man coverage upside. So I don't agree, but I mean, it depends how much value is there. I'm hoping that CJ Henderson is beloved because if he goes off the board before the Broncos pick, hell yeah, sign me up. Same with Caleb on Chasen. But that's somebody to toss out there who's somebody I don't think is a great fit for the Broncos and what they want to do, but maybe a scheme like Detroit, which should put so much in regards to man coverage on the outside, just leaving guys on island. The Henderson's length, his fluidity, his ability to stick in a guy's hip is really good. It's just when you asking him to process, from the zone concept or tackle one-on-one in space, that's when it really falls off, which again, that's a reason that he doesn't make sense for Broncos, but could be a top 15 pick for many schemes.
And in regards to Henderson, there's a lot of people out there that don't view tackling as important for cornerbacks. That's where we get the Darrelle Revises of the world. Darrelle Revis was known for not tackling, but he could
exactly. Yes.
You could trust these guys on an island, and that's CJ Henderson. I like his play and coverage, but I like tackling. I like my corners to tackle. I don't like to be afraid of it. So from my own personal board, he takes a hit as a result of that. For the Broncos, he takes a huge hit for that because tackling is not negotiable. But it really depends on how the Giants would view him or the Lions would view him. And with Matt Patricia, I could see him not valuing tackling as much as he does just his coverage ability that he has.
Yeah, island ability.
And that's a fair point. Now, when I watch CJ Henderson, I really like his patience and just the way that he does. I mean, like you said, Nick, he can stick in your hip and move, but he's very patient, especially when he's off ball. Now, to kind of go forward just a little bit with another team that could potentially be moving up, there's 2 here. And this was something that I believe it was Matt Miller. We talked about this just right before we jumped on live. Was Matt Miller said that the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Las Vegas Raiders are potential teams that could move up. Now, we broke it down just a little bit, and I think that, Nick, you said that it would be potentially for a quarterback. And let's just talk about the Raiders for just a second before we go into the Jaguars.
Well, the Raiders have, I believe, same as the Broncos, 5 picks in the top 100. And I actually believe they have more value than the Broncos do because those are 2 first-round picks and 3 thirds. So obviously you have more value there. So if there's a quarterback they like in this class, there's no reason that they shouldn't at least, if there's your guy there, no reason to not make at least a bid into that. And I think just from a schematic making sense, I think it would probably be for Tua. So they're probably looking to jump up. They'd have to package 12, 19, maybe a future something as well, a second and maybe a third this year, because moving from 12/19 up into the top 5 that's quite a move still. But I mean, if that's your quarterback, in this league, I saw somebody talking about how much of a difference is it for the quarterback. Essentially, quarterback's baseline. If you don't have a guy, you're not doing anything unless you have like an all-time defense or get super duper lucky. But really, quarterback, the best chance to win the Super Bowl is to repeatedly knock on the door and make the playoffs. And the best way to do that is to have a franchise quarterback. So we've seen Derek Carr. We were talking about it before we went on air here. He's a quarterback where you can win with him, but he's that one where if you don't utilize him during that rookie contract where he's giving you really good value on the dollar, then you're probably not going to win with him. Once you pay him, that ability, he just is not, he's like a tier 3, tier 4 quarterback where he's cheap. You can build a great team around him. But after that, I don't know. It's like kind of the Andy Dalton theory. It's what we do not want with Drew Lock, which, we're remaining to see. I don't want to be super pessimistic, but we're remaining to see if he's going to be Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, or Carson Wentz up there. No, obviously not Patrick Mahomes, but that's a different discussion. But I could see it with the Raiders. I mean, if they love Tua, if they love Herbert, I think Tua would be their target, but it does make sense to me. And when you have all this assets, they've spent a good amount of money. They filled out their roster with a bunch of C-level talent, but still they don't have many holes because of all those signings they made. So if there's a quarterback they love, I mean, it makes sense. But I'm very much quarterback or bust if you don't have your guy.
Well, and exactly. Sorry, Eric. I'm gonna take this away here for just a second. And you're absolutely right. Now, to kind of move this forward just a little bit, Eric. I'm sorry to step on your toes there, but with the Jacksonville Jaguars in regard to potentially moving up, who is a couple of guys that you could see them going to target here?
I could see them doing the same, but Herbert, I feel like, is the guy for them if they were going to make that move. However, they're a team that I think it makes a little less sense just because the lack of stability that they have currently. But they do have a good amount of capital, 2 first-round picks again. So if there is a guy that you love, I have no issue taking a guy. If there's a quarterback that you like, it's non-negotiable in competing in the NFL. You have to have a quarterback. Right now they have Gardner Minshew. Good story. I'm not feeling super-duper confident if he's my quarterback. So then, and they've spent a decent amount on that offensive line. And they obviously still need some work there, but there's pieces there. They have DJ Chark, who's emerged into one of the better young wide receivers in football. D.D. Westbrook's a decent complementary weapon. They could use another wide receiver. But really, if there's a quarterback there, then you at least have to make the call.
Go ahead, Eric.
So with the Raiders, I think that obviously, yes, it is Tua. If they want to move up, that's the quarterback they're targeting. And you mentioned all these signings that they made, and they're actually kind of sort of taking the page out of John Elway's book, going into the draft without any major holes on their roster. They have guys who can fill in these holes that they aren't forced to maximize every single draft pick to fill these holes to potentially field a competent team next year. They can use this, having a good roster, and they can afford to package those picks and move up and go get that quarterback. With the Jaguars, that's not the case. I don't see them moving up for a quarterback. I think that they are content sitting there and just working on building the team this year, and then going into next year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, seeing what he can do for him, giving him a year, seeing what their new offensive coordinator can do with him. Name's totally escaping me right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I forgot it.
And just seeing what he can do. And then if they don't get enough wins, then, hey, look, the quarterbacks that we mentioned earlier, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, and there's another quarterback, too, that it's
Newsome. Georgia. Newsome.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of hype.
Yep. There's as all potential guys that they can go after then. Just build up that roster. They don't have the benefit of the Raiders. They don't have a strong roster. They've had to gut their roster because of some very poor decisions with free agency. I mean, Calais Campbell, they ended up trading him away. That wasn't a bad move by them at the time, but just how they structured it, they didn't really have a way out. Nick Foles was a terrible move last year, and they've already moved on from him. Yep. AJ Boye, Marcel Darius, these are guys that they had on the roster that they cut or traded because of issues with spending them. They just couldn't afford it. They were over the cap this year entering free agency. So I don't see it with them as much, But hey, as Nick said, if you find a guy and you want to target that guy at the quarterback position, then go get it. I still think that the coaching staff may know that this is their last year in Jacksonville, that just kind of building the roster so the next guy can kind of take over and do with it and go with it from there.
And on counterpoint to that, the Jags of any team, the Broncos know this too, but building a championship defense, that is as fragile as it gets. It depends on 15 guys, and when you have an elite defense, you have 1 year. I mean, they were one win away from going to the gosh darn Super Bowl. Yep. And then after that, back to picking in the top 10, top 5. So, if you have a quarterback, that gives you the biggest window of competition where you can reload multiple years rather than resulting on that one peak defensive year. I mean, anecdotally, we all love that 2015 Broncos defense, but it fell off after that. It's just way too hard to have that many guys healthy, their peak years in terms of performance, and then also, ones that are not leaving via free agency. It's just way too hard to do. So that's why these elite defenses are blips.
Well, and just to add to that one point about having that elite defense for just the 1 year and having that 1 year window, when you look at it, they built up that elite defense, the Broncos and the Jaguars both, but they both had insecure quarterback situations. So with the Broncos, obviously Peyton Manning retires. And then the next year after the Jaguars were in the AFC Championship game, they doubled down and went and got and doubled down on Blake Bortles being the guy. And come to find out, you can't win like that. They lost some players in free agency, but with Blake Bortles, there was just no way that they could actually keep that reign of success and continue on that forward over the long term. Now we're going to open this up to some comments here, and I'm going to go dig through this really fast. We got a super chat donation here from Willie Naylor, $2 donation. Thank you, Willie. We appreciate you joining us today. What's up, family? Nothing to say, just donating. Hey, man, we appreciate you, dude. Now, I do got a hot take, and it's kind of my hot take. I've just divulged it to you guys, and it's just something that we've talked about kind of briefly, and everybody knows, and I've been really kind of high on Denzel Mims, the wide receiver out of Baylor this year. And with the athletic testing, especially after the combine, you got to see, 6'3", 209, runs a 4.40, 6'6", 3-cone drill, jumps out of the building. A lot of teams are really going to like that size, length, athleticism kind of a combination there. I'm going to bold predict that he's going to be the number 3 wide receiver taken in this NFL draft. And honestly, it goes down to not only the size, weight, speed, athleticism kind of a combination, but the ability as a blocker. His willingness as a blocker. He's probably the best blocking wide receiver in the class. The size, speed, athleticism, the tape is there. And he fits exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. I think that the 49ers at number 13 overall, Denzel Mims fits there. And that's just my personal decision there.
I think 13 might be a little bit high for him. They are missing some capital. Obviously, they have the 2 first-round picks, but it's pretty much a barren wasteland after that. So you could see some jostling and still wind up with a guy like Denzel Mims. I mean, heck, the Philadelphia Eagles picking there. You might be able to get Denzel Mims. What do they pick in? 21? And if that's a team that's begging to jump the Broncos to get Henry Ruggs. I mean, gosh, they would just trip over themselves if they could do that. So that's something to watch. I do like Mims in regards to the fit there with the blocking. I do have some questions about Jimmy Garoppolo's, solid system quarterback there for them. Doesn't have the best arm. A lot of his best work is over the middle of the field. And Mims hasn't really shown that ability to win over the middle of the field as much. He's more of a vertical boundary receiver, which has a lot of value, but I'm not sure if that comes with the 49ers. But with the blocking, the spacing out the field, that all makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think 13 is where he goes, but I could see them obviously moving around, playing the draft game, and walking away with him.
Yeah, there's one big rumor going around, and actually a comment that I've actually heard pretty reliably about this, that with Kyle Shanahan, Denzel Mims is his favorite receiver, and that he's their number 2 receiver on their board. So I can actually see them going with him at that. There's been a lot of talk going around that Denzel Mims will be one of the first 3 receivers taken off the board. Not necessarily even just the 3rd, but one of the first 3. A lot of talk about him going top 15. Just it's enough talk of it to where that there seems to be some fire there. I do think that it would have to very much depend on how other things fall on the board, with where do other receivers go, where do tackles go, where do tackles fall, things like that. I definitely can see it happening. If it's one of those things where everything has to fall right into place for it to happen. And so definitely a possibility. And I think when we're talking about the 49ers, I think that they're a good fit for him in some ways. In some other ways, I don't. And I think that he is a guy that they definitely do like. They are eyeing. But I really think with what I've heard and everything, that defensive line, that they're hoping that Derek Brown falls to them, or Javon Kinlaw is still there. That's really what I'm hearing from them, is that they want to continue having that force on their defensive front.
And I just want to look at that. Ahead. Nick Kendall's #1 stan. I got a good picture of you there. Love you guys. All right.
To kind of keep going on with how has free agency affected the top 10, top 15 of the draft, Scotty Partridge coming in on Facebook, and he says, do you see the Broncos trading into the top 10 to not get a wide receiver?
It depends on how the board falls. Personally, for me, I only have 2 guys that make sense in regards to trading up in the top 10 that would be potentially worth the capital. Again, if you're trading in the top 10 and it's not for a quarterback, typically that makes me a little bit squeamish. It scares me a little bit. But Jeffrey Okudah and Isaiah Simmons are the 2 that, if they fall to, let's say, 7, 8, 9, I'm calling. And the worst, I'm calling. I'm still interested in Tristan Wirfs and Jedrick Wills, but there's 4 solid tackles. There's good tackle depth later, and they just played Glasgow. You already have the 2 tackles pretty much set. And just all the talk coming out of Denver, they are going to give Bowles another year. They're going to put some pressure on him, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a first-round pick, at least trading up first-round pick. If it falls and that's the best player available at 15, then that's how it falls. But I definitely think they could trade up to 10, maybe 9, and target a wide receiver if their infatuation with Ruggs is as rumored.
Yeah, I think that based off of what I've heard, I think another name that to potentially watch out. I definitely think the 2 names that you said are guys to watch if they fall that Denver might start calling up. But Derek Brown is another that I can see them maybe not pulling the trigger for. I think that would be something that they may want to be willing to pay a little bit less, just sit there and because it's a defensive lineman, even though it's not a great class, and you don't really want to give up too much to move up for him. So I can see them calling around, seeing what it would cost, and if it's too much, then just not doing it. But Derek Brown, definitely, I think that this is a guy that basically he finishes off their defensive line. You would have Jarrell Casey, Derek Brown, and Draymond Jones as your 3 starters. And with a coach that wants to win with as few pass rushers as possible, going into your sub packages with Derek Brown, Jarrell Casey, Von Miller, and Bradley Chubb, you're be able to win with as few pass rushers as possible. So I think it makes sense, but again, it's always definitely going to come down to that cost. Outside of that, I think that the really only person that they will be willing to move up for and maybe slightly overpay is Henry Ruggs.
Yeah. Well, I can see that, especially with the need to add some multi-dimensional speed. That's a hot ticket item with you there, Nick, is the multi-dimensional speed, being able to stretch not only vertically but horizontally, getting people moving all over the field, opening up all the options. I mean, you got Noah Fant, a 4 or 5 tight end. You've got Courtland Sutton on the outside, being able to go and take the top off in his own way, in the way that he can go and contort his body and make those contest catches. Now, to have a true burner that can move not only vertically but horizontally across the middle of the field, take some of those slants, those crossing routes, and then turn them into big, huge gains, potential touchdowns. I mean, Henry Ruggs had 24 touchdowns or something like that, like 98 touches and 24 touchdowns or whatever the heck the ungodly number was. And it just seems like every time that he touches the football, he's going to the house. So, I mean, if you're going to go and get a guy, that might be the guy that would really sing to me. If you're going to go get Ruggs, and I would potentially be willing to do that, especially if it only takes you got 3 3rd-round picks. Take 2 of those, package up, move inside the top 10 to go get a guy like that. Then I could maybe see it, maybe swallow that. I wouldn't necessarily like it, but I could swallow it. Now, David Cromelo coming in on the super chat. Thank you, David. A big fan of the show, big fan of the website as well. Are the Broncos in position to reach at 15? Now, I'm going to start this off here, and we always say it. It all depends on how the board falls. If the Broncos are in position to reach, that means probably all 4 of the offensive tackles are gone. You've got the big 3 at the wide receivers are gone. You're sitting there with a bunch of quarterbacks because C.J. Henderson is gone, and then you've got Christian Fulton, maybe Kalavan Chase, and guys like that have jumped into the top 10. Now you're looking at maybe some interior defensive line prospects. I think that you've got a good chance at Javon Kinlaw there. But if that were to maybe be the case, I would think that the Broncos would move down. Like, why would they not be willing to move down, get some even more capital in this exponentially deep draft class at wide receiver, cornerback, and offensive line?
It just takes 2 to tango. Team has to be calling and offering something. So there's some times where it just doesn't make sense. And it depends on how far they want to go. Like let's say there's a team offering them pick 30, 31, let's say the 49ers or somebody picking 30, but the Broncos have 4 players they like and they don't see any of them being there at 30. So it's really circumstantial. But just back to David's question here, the Broncos in a position to reach? Hopefully never. hopefully you never reach. You got to trust your board. But I mean, what might make sense for one team might not make sense for another. But no, if you think you're reaching, don't make the pick. That's there should be somebody there. And obviously sometimes you're in a situation where you don't love it. But if you're looking at this like, is this a reach? Probably shouldn't make that pick.
Yeah, my philosophy is if you are viewing your pick as a reach, it's the wrong pick. That's how simple it is. And to the media and stuff, and I know Nick and I think we've actually had this conversation almost exactly before, that just because on my board I may be lower on player X doesn't mean that team is that low on him. Media boards and stuff like that and public draft analyst boards are not reflective of what NFL teams have them. They have a lot more access to a lot more information than we do, and their boards are definitely more refined and gone over, and not just the opinion of a few people. It's the opinions of 15, 20 people that are sitting there and compiling that board. So if it comes to a position where you don't have a player on your board that you really like there, then you look to trade down. If you can't trade down, then you take your player that's best suited for that. If you're picking 15th overall, then somebody who's in your top 15 is going to be there, if not multiple. Even if, say, just as an example, not saying it's going to happen, say something happens and Chase Young is there, then obviously you take him. Say something happens and Justin Herbert's there. Well, you don't really need a quarterback, but who else is there? It all depends on how the board falls. And if you're making a pick that you feel is a reach, don't make that pick. It's that simple.
Yeah. Obviously, it's got to line up with the best player available at a position of need is a good way to go into it. And sometimes you do get a good value. I mean, let's just go. There was a question here that I wanted to grab. And let's see here. It's Miller707 Champ jumping in on YouTube. He says, do you think Trevon Diggs is a good fit for Denver? Also, is it a realistic possibility to get him in the second round? I've been seeing a lot of mocks having him fall to the second round. Now, that would potentially be there. I mean, that's a first-round player right there. And if he falls to the second round, if the Broncos and they also have the need there, a best player available at a position of need there, you've got Trevon Diggs, potentially AJ Terrell. I mean, let's see, Noah Benigine, the cornerback out of Auburn. If you get that opportunity to take a guy that's the best player available at a position of need, or that can just upgrade the overall roster, like what's the question there? I guess I don't understand it. Like, if you think it's a reach, then don't take the pick.
Yeah. Shout out also Jalen Johnson from Utah, who I think I like more than most people, but he's in that same range.
Yeah. So before we go on, there's actually one question that I really want to take, because I see our chat. They're having a conversation about Jerry Judy or about Henry Ruggs and trading up for him, and that it's not worth it. And
I know Jody's probably talking in here. I know Jody, we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum here. He hates Henry Ruggs. He loves Andrew Thomas. I don't like Andrew Thomas in regards to the Broncos and picking 15, and I do like Henry Ruggs.
But Brian Weatherwax comes in and he says, Ruggs Jr.'s year stat line, 40 catches, 746 yards, 7 touchdowns. Tua missing a good portion hurts, but A, you don't move up for a wide receiver in the first round unless your name is Jerry Rice. B, wide receiver is so deep, Ruggs over-under position is 15.5. Well, there's multiple things that I want to address in this, and your 2 points are one of them. Actually, and there's been actually quite a few studies about this that I've actually been really enjoying, because I am not for moving up for any player. Don't care who it is. You don't move up. It typically doesn't work.
Unless it's a quarterback.
Even for a quarterback, I'm not for it. But here's the thing, is of all the positions that are most successful in actually trading up for and then panning out, it's wide receiver. Wide receiver tends to have the most success and have your return be at least the same as what you're giving up, as what you're getting from him, that the return is equal. So wide receiver is actually the best position to move up for, no matter who it is. I mean, yes, there are some out there who have failed and not lived up to the expectations, but that is one of the more positions. I mean, what? AJ Green and Julio Jones weren't one of them moved up for? I mean, that's just
Julio was.
That's just massive trade. Yeah, that's just one example of it, but that is actually one of the positions that it is better to trade up for. And wide receiver is so deep. Yes, it is. But here is the thing, and I've talked about this on Twitter I think it was yesterday, that yes, it's a simulation. But when you're running a simulation with this mock, and you're sitting here and you decide to pass on a receiver at 15, and you get to 46 because you're willing to wait because the receiver's bad, and then all the receivers you like at 46, they're gone. You wait till 77, all the receivers you like at 77, they're gone. Every year we hear about, we can wait on position X because it's so deep. Well, when the NFL draft comes around, what actually happens? Teams don't wait. No. Teams take them. Just because it's a deep class doesn't mean you pass up on elite talent. Henry Ruggs is an elite talent. I know a lot of people out there are saying he's just a speed receiver, and I have been very down on him. Nick and Lance can both confirm this, that I'm probably the lowest on Henry Ruggs of the three of us. But I can see the reason for him. I can see the fact that his speed, and he's not just a speed receiver, opens up so much more for the whole Broncos offense, for Cortland Sutton, for Noah Fant, for Melvin Gordon, for whatever other weapons they add on this offense. I can see the fact that he is a improving route runner. I can see him being able to make these contested catches that are needed. I can see him getting these catch and run situations and making big plays out of it, working out of screens, working on quick slants, working on comeback routes. Yes, there are improvements that are needed, but he's not just a speed receiver. He's got tremendous hands, which I see a lot of people comparing him to John Ross. John Ross has terrible hands. Will Fuller has terrible hands. Major medical questions for both of them. John Ross, yeah, he got drafted as high as he did for speed, but he was exclusively a 9-route guy. Only running the go route. That was basically exclusively his route in college. Henry Ruggs is offering up a little bit more of a route tree than that.
I have data in front of me also in regards to Ruggs essentially as a space creator. He's going to do as much not touching the ball as he is going to do touching the ball. And it's a Will Fuller effect. I have this data in front of me. The Texans offense this last year in the regular season with Will Fuller and without Will Fuller. The QBR with Will Fuller, 75.2. Without Will Fuller, 59.8. Yards per play, 6.08 with Will Fuller, 5.29 without Will Fuller. Yards per attempt, 7.78 with, 6.32 without. Sacks per attempt. So, wide receiver, how does that matter? Changes how the defense can play you. Sacks per attempt, 7.8 with Will Fuller, 10.7 without Will Fuller. And then third down conversion, 51.9%, 32.9%, 51.9 with 32.9 without. So really it's about isolating matchups and making the dictating what the defense does against you.
Yeah, and last thing I'm going to say on this is, Jody, if you move up for why not get the best receiver? It's all relative depending on who the best receiver is. And teams view it differently. CeeDee Lamb is my number one receiver. I would love it if Denver moved up for it. I don't think he's Denver's number one receiver. I don't think he's multiple teams' number one receiver. I'd be surprised if he's actually more than, let's say, 16 teams' number one receiver. I'd actually be shocked about that. And as for being the best receiver on Alabama, I think that even more teams would view him as the best receiver in Alabama than Jerry Jeudy as the best receiver coming out of Alabama.
Ooh, with the hot take. No, I'm just playing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot to be said. We're looking at the Alabama wide receiver class in a whole completely different light here, guys. Like we're arguing about Jerry Jeudy versus Henry Ruggs when you also have Adrian Waddle and Devontae Smith, I believe is his name. There's four guys that could all be potentially first-round picks in the NFL draft. Like that wide receiver class is so, the wide receiver room in Alabama is so exquisitely talented. Like seriously, four guys back-to-back years. We're gonna have two guys this year, two guys next year out of the Alabama wide receiver group. They're going to be first-round picks. Now we're getting a little bit long here. I got to go ahead and grab this really quick. Stu coming in on the super chat with a $10 donation. Always thank you very much, Stu. We see you. We appreciate you coming down, as Chad likes to say, off of the Mile High Huddle. Mount Rushmore, I believe is what it is. Stu, always so consistent and everything like that. We appreciate you, man. Get a couple more questions here before we have to get out of here tonight. Kenneth Booker, here's actually a decent one. Brandon Cooks wants a trade. Should the Broncos kick the tires?
I'd be interested in the talent. I'm not sure I'm interested in the contract. I think that after you paid Melvin Gordon, that probably said bon voyage to any chance of taking on another poison pill contract. So that's probably the reality of it.
Yeah, I agree. And as much as I like Brandon Cooks, I like what he could bring to the offense. But again, it's just that contract that I would take. And real quick, Jody, I actually have Henry Ruggs over Jerry Jeudy on my board, and I am the lowest of the three of us. So,
I don't want to go too down this wormhole because we've already done it for a bit, but I mean, Henry Ruggs almost exclusively played on the backside of Tua and was not the primary read. You typically had it be Jeudy or Waddle. Ruggs is this guy isolating, drawing coverage, etc. So, I mean, just based on how talented, I mean, if Jerry Jeudy's the first guy open, that's where the ball is going. I mean, he's open. Get him the ball. But you can watch the tape. I mean, go check out Brad Kelly's YouTube. It's on. He has the all 22, like the way up. You can see the entire field, not the the broadcast. You can see Henry Ruggs is freaking open. Like, it's just that Jeudy was open and he's the higher percentage throw, so Alabama just needs to control the ball. But I mean, well, there's something to be said there. Go ahead.
And to add on to that just a little bit, there was something that I had seen that Jerry Jeudy played primarily out of the slot. I mean, go back and watch the tape. It's absolutely true. Jerry Jeudy played primarily out of the slot with Henry Ruggs on the outside, and he was dictating that deep coverage over the top. And he was still getting open. Now, those easier, higher percentage throws to Jerry Jeudy on the quick hitches, the quick slants, quick pivot routes, the ins and outs and everything with his elite level route running ability, of course you're going to throw him the football, and then he can do stuff after the catch. Now, with Henry Ruggs, when he was on the backside, that quick backside slant pass, it's going to the house regardless. Like, I personally, just to go against and just to kind of give you just an idea about how many different takes there are on this wide receiver class. Eric, you said that you had CeeDee Lamb as your number one wide receiver in this class. I personally have Jerry Jeudy. I think he's a better route runner. I think he's a better with the ball in his hands after the catch. He can do so much before and after the catch to beat coverage and then to beat defenders. That's just my personal take on the situation. Nick, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's Ruggs, Jeudy, Lamb, or is who's your number one wide receiver?
I have 1A, 1B, and 1C. I mean, literally, it depends on. It's like asking you what your favorite ice cream is. Yeah, I mean, I personally like Ruggs the most, just because of what he can bring. I think is the most dynamic, and I'm looking for guys that can create without the ball, guys who can create for others, rather than ones that need to be high volume players to be validated. So I'm again, looking for the best mixture of talent, and I think that Ruggs with Sutton with Fant is. I mean, every single one of those guys is so different. So, but I'd take any of them. Luckily for the Broncos, if one does fall to 15, that decision's probably going to be made for you. But we'll see what happens. I have no issue with any of them. And then after that, my tier 2 is Mims, Jefferson, and Rager.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. Brian Kraft, are you ignoring my question? No, Brian, I just haven't seen it yet. I'm trying to go through the conversations moving pretty fast. Go ahead and throw it out there again and we'll get to it. We're going to take a couple more questions and kind of wind this down. We're going to have to get out of here. I got some extra stuff going on, extracurricular things with my personal life that I need to get taken care of tonight as well. So let's see if we can find another couple of questions.
There's one I want to grab real quick because he asked me about it. Oh.
I was interested in that one too.
Wanna Beast. My Blacklock video isn't up yet. I'm not sure when it'll be up, but it's definitely submitted and just waiting to be published. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be up on YouTube.
So Ian Garrett coming in on Facebook, he says, what are your guys' thoughts on Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tyler Johnson? Now, Eric, I know that you had heard some stuff at the Combine regarding Minnesota wide receiver Tyler Johnson. What is the outlook of him after what seemingly has destroyed his draft stock?
So part of the issue with him is that he pulled out of the Shrine Bowl week to sit there and prepare for the Combine. Then he pulled out of the Combine because he wasn't feeling ready yet, and he was going to do it at Pro Day, and obviously stuff happened there. He wasn't able to do it at Pro Day because I don't think he had a Pro Day. I think Minnesota actually canceled theirs. So that's a big issue there. I mean, now teams have absolutely no idea about anything with him because he's passed up on opportunities to show something. Teams could understand, from what I was told, of pulling out of the Shrine game to focus on the Combine. They can understand that. Big part of the draft stock there. They would have liked to see him against some of the tougher competition. But the issue is you then proceed to go and pull out of the Combine that you've been preparing over a month for. It doesn't sit well. There's a lot of questions of what was he doing? Was he actually preparing, or was he just kind of taking it easy and relaxing? There's a lot of questions about him involving that just make me want to shy away. So.
There's also some rumors about his character that Dane Brugler had brought up in the past, that he's had issues with coaching staff in the past. And again, it's this Jerry Jeudy comment again. He wins from the slot. There's a niche for that, but that's much less valuable than a guy who's going to have higher ADOT, average depth of target, winning on the boundary, winning vertically. So, I mean, watching a Big Ten fan here, but watching Minnesota, you see Tyler Johnson, who's getting a good amount of volume targets, but 10 out of 10 times, give me Rashad Bateman. That's the dude out in Minnesota that you need to watch for. Could be a first-round pick next year at wide receiver. I do like Winfield a fair amount also. He is a little bit older. I think he's a double medical red shirt, but he's versatile. So he's an interesting one. I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the first safeties taken. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Darnell Savage because he's a smaller guy, can play that single high, can come down and play that nickel role as well. But the injuries are a little bit concerning there. So I like him in a vacuum. I don't know if I love him for Denver.
Yeah, that's fair. Willie Naylor coming in and helping your boy Lance out here really fast. Brian Kraft's question was, if the Broncos make the playoffs, will they be contenders? This is actually a pretty interesting question. It goes back to, what was it? Was it last night's or the night before's Huddle Up podcast? And arguing with the odds makers and the Broncos over under win total. Now, I'm a little bit bullish on this Broncos team. I think that they have a fairly decent roster. They're doing a good job building up. We'll see what this draft class has in tow. I really am sold on Drew Lock as well. I think that as a quarterback of the future, a guy that can go out and help you win some games. Going 4-1 as a starter in the NFL is hard enough to do as it is, especially with a roster depleted of an offensive line. I mean, there's a lot of injuries on the offensive line up front, a lot of injuries on the defensive front as well. And they go 4-1 over the stretch and get themselves up to 7 wins. So now this year, I think that if with the Broncos in their draft class, it's going to be a big key to this, and especially if they could get another draft class that has a high first year impact as well. But I don't see there's any reason why you would expect any less than 9 wins. I mean, just with the steady improvement that this team has shown, Vic Fangio bringing in the right culture, the team is gearing themselves up for a big run here. And as, John Ledyard, I believe, and Jordan Reed from the Draft Network, those guys are very high on what the Broncos have done this year in free agency, going out and getting Jarrell Casey, going out and getting A.J. Bouye, the Melvin Gordon signing, whether we like the contract or not. We've all had this discussion over and over and over again. The player meets, that's a great upgrade for the Broncos in the running back room. Like, I don't see there's any reason why this team should fall off from where they were at last year. And if they do make it to the playoffs, they might be able to make some noise. I don't expect them to maybe contend for a Super Bowl, but I could see them stealing a win on the road.
It's possible. Right now, my baseline is 500. Making the playoffs would be great. Let's just get above 500. And how good they can be, as lazy as it is, it depends on how good Drew Lock is. This team is good. They have a lot of good pieces around him, but 5 games from Drew Lock, it was a little bit up and down. It was good. I mean, it wasn't obviously bad, but the Raiders secondary was absolutely trash. Their defense was trash. And the same with the Detroit Lions. And he didn't have 2 good games there. He had that really good Texans game. He was okay against the Chargers. And then that Chiefs game was, what can you take from it? So really, there's still a lot to be found out about Drew Lock. I'm cautiously optimistic, but how great is he going to be? That's still yet to be seen. So they need work to do. The offensive line needs to be healthy. You need to have Juwan James there. You need to. The Broncos' second and third wide receivers and Deshaun Hamilton and Tim Patrick are as bad as any 2-3 wide receiver in the NFL. And we're going to a scheme that's going to demand more wide receiver sets. So all that stuff is just, there's a lot of questions. I do think that the floor is higher. Second year, have quarterback for the full season, a quarterback that is not as dependent on the offensive line. And he can get rid of it. He can create a little bit. That's key. You need your quarterback to be a playmaker. But as far as a contender, I'm hoping to make the playoffs, but if they don't, it's a tough division. The Raiders and the Chargers have made some good moves. Chiefs are obviously the freaking champs, and it's still a tough schedule. So I hope they make the playoffs, but I'm putting the 500 as the baseline. So that's what is the Vegas has them at 7.5. I think that's a pretty good number. I'd go over. I'd go 8, but I think that's a pretty good number.
See, I think that the Broncos have a better chance of competing for a top 5 pick next year than competing for the playoffs. No. I'm actually kidding on that.
I think as soon as you said it, I knew it was a joke.
I think that they have a very good roster. Obviously, I'm not going to give an actual record prediction because I want to see how the draft goes and how the rest of free agency and everything. And I think that they could push for the playoffs. I don't think they'll make much noise there. I think that they'll be one of those teams that, hey, you made it to the playoffs, but you're not getting any farther. You're just going to get rolled over. I think that's kind of what's going to be happen. And then there's always the whole possibility that next year they're just picking 15 again because there is no football season.
Yeah. That's definitely. I would be curious what would happen. Like if they take multiple seasons, like it would not be fair to give the Bengals the first overall pick back-to-back years and let them, take Trevor Lawrence.
It would definitely be a interesting thing to think about. But it all depends on that. If the season happens, I think that they could compete for the playoffs. I don't think much would happen there. But it's going to depend on what happens in the draft.
I know I'm totally taking over here for your guys' podcast. I'm the guest, but I've seen this question about 30 times now. Maybe it's all from Samuel Caleb, so way to stay persistent there because we're talking. Maybe it's been from other people, but Ruggs in the first and Epinesa in the second. Do you think this is realistic? I think it's realistic. I do think that just because of the lack of edge talent in this class, it's really after Chase Young, it falls off an absolute cliff, which is sad because you have a really good, potentially presidential, every 4 to 8 years level of talent in regards to Chase Young coming in. But after that, Caleb on Chason, that's a lot of projection. Uter Gross Matos, that's not great. You doing Josh Uche or Zach Bond, who are more of a kind of a hybrid linebacker / off-ball guy. So I could see it. I think Epinesa is still going to go in the first round. I think that somebody's going to take him at the back end of the first round.
Watch out for New England.
Go ahead, Lance, because I'll take this after you because there was a question that I wanted to grab real quick too.
Oh, go ahead, Eric. I'm starting to break up a little bit here, guys, so I do apologize for that.
So I'd be very shocked if Epinesa falls to the second round, and if he does, I'm not sure Denver would go his way. There's been some conversations I've had with some people who view him that it's a similar kind of player as Draymond Jones was when he was coming out, because Draymond Jones was a little bit lighter and sitting there working to bulk up a little bit to play on the interior. And that's kind of how AJ Epinesa is. And then I've seen a bunch of questions, and I can't find it here, asking about Laviska Shenault, where his draft stock and his injuries. And this is actually a very interesting question. I think that with the impact that has happened with everything that's going on in the world, with the lack of, rechecks of the medicals at combines, with the lack of pro days, with the lack of visits, I really do think that players with major medical histories, especially a guy like Laviska Shenault, who re-aggravated his groin injury at the combine, running the 40, not being able to have a pro day, having that surgery afterwards, I think that's really going to affect his stock. I think that any player with major medical concerns is going to see their stock really tumble. And I've had some conversations about this. As good as his tape is, there are some people out there that are projecting him to be a late day 3 pick because of this. So it's going to be interesting to see how things fall with these players, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on with any player that has major medical concerns. Lucas Niang is another one, and how far they fall. Another group of players like that are players who are from smaller schools and players who weren't invited to the combine. I think that this may be one of the years that in 5 years from now, we're looking back and talking about, oh man, I can't believe so-and-so went undrafted. I can't believe so-and-so went undrafted. I can see that happening 5 years from now because these players that aren't invited to the combine aren't having a chance to show themselves off.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, Eric. And I'm glad that you went back and actually addressed that question, because that was one that I was going to go back and try to find, because it was a very intriguing one. I like Laviska Shenault a lot. I mean, the size and the ability that it has playing the wide receiver position like a running back, just getting a little bit of an update there is very good. Now, guys, unfortunately, we're running really long here, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you guys all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow the show at DVDD_pod. You can follow me at Sanderson MHH, for Eric at Erick Trickel. Notice the K in Eric. And for Nick Kendell at Nick Kendell MHH. It's right there underneath his fingertips because he's being a spaz, like always. Also, make sure you guys are following at Huddle Up Pod. Make sure you guys are in touch with everything that's going on with the podcast network, and also at Mile High Huddle, so you can get updates on your Denver Broncos, breaking news, analysis, insight piece, analytics pieces from Thomas Hall. Bob Morris doing a great job with breaking down the new CBA and the salary cap and everything like that. Film breakdowns from me, from Eric, Nick, Carl, all the guys. And I mean, we do it the best we can to provide you guys with all of the best Broncos information that we can. Also, if you guys get a chance, go ahead and check out huddleuppod.com. That's our merch store. It's because you guys were pounding the table to go out and get everything brought in, get some hats, get some t-shirts. There's some new tank tops and stuff like that. Go out and help support the show, help support the website. It's a great way for you guys to not only support the show and support everybody else like that. Now, before we get out of here, just one quick matter of business for me and Eric. Tomorrow night, we are going to be joined by Coach Luke Polglaze once again to talk and break down some of the running backs in this year's draft class. So it's going to be a lot of fun, specifically some late round guys, some guys that stop it, Nick. But anyway, some late round guys that are that the Broncos could be looking at, especially after the acquisition of Melvin Gordon. Now, Nick, is there anything else you want to get out to the Dove Valley Deep Divers following?
Well, thank you. I saw we had a late minute chat or a super chat here from Willie Naylor, who has got a great picture there of his family. It looks like he's enjoying some social distancing there with the family, but you guys are awesome. Thank you. Also, hashtag Nick's Beer Fund. So appreciate that. Once we're done here, I'm going to go crack open a cold one. It is Friday night.
So we got to figure something out, Lance, because Chad and Zach, they have football priests, they have State of Being, and I think State of Being is for all podcasts. Nick over here has his hashtag Nick Beers Fun. We need one for us, man. No, it's not.
It's the best.
Nothing involving you, Nick, is the best. So just so you know.
Hold on. I got one.
So chat, help us out. Go ahead, Lance.
There was one up here. I'm going to go ahead, just keep on going, because there was actually a question up here from one of our really good friends of the show from Bawana Beast, talking about my kind of personal life just a little bit. If I can find it really fast.
Nick is a dweeb.
Yes.
Nick is a dweeb.
So guys, help us out with that. Think of a hashtag. Reveal it in the chat tomorrow, you guys. We will be back, as Lance said. We're gonna have Coach Luke Polglacey coaches in college, and he's coaching receivers currently, and he used to coach running backs. It's gonna be nice to talk about him and talking about a lot of the technical stuff, as Bawana Beast has mentioned in here about having him on talk about stuff. So Erick,
anyways,
smile, bro. You're a Bronco fan, dude. I'm ugly when I smile, so I try not to.
Anyways, to get this one last thing and really fast, as far as our new hashtag goes, we got Nick's beer fun. How about Lance's diaper fun? Bawana Beast specifically, how's the baby? We just found out this reason why I was gone last week was we went and found out how what the gender is of our child, and I'm proud to announce it is a boy. I'm very excited. So Caven Elliott Sanderson will be the newest Broncos fan on August 3rd, 2020. So with that, guys, we're going to have to wrap it all up. Thank you all once again for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys have a great night. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. And you guys have a great evening. Willie Naylor with the $2 donation. Eric, the Draft King, the Draft God, hashtag Draft God. There you go. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you all once again. Have a good night.